On the flip side, I've seen at one of the tech companies where IT organization is at the forefront, helping tax, building a robust transfer pricing mechanism for them, and it's dedicating all of their IT resources to the tax function. And we can really see the success in terms of how iterative and quickly they're churning out this technology solution for the tax guys. So that's where I
So not only is that saving them time, but is it saving them money from a tax perspective as well?
Yeah, exactly, and control as well. It's an in-house technology that they can control, and IT is bought into that whole process, so they can react to those changes as well that comes from tax perspective. If something changes, IT will be at its forefront to help. Otherwise, it's like a long-term software development life cycle that one has to go through, and it never gets done for that.
And that doesn't work for anybody, honestly. It can't be that long-term software development life cycle because your needs change so rapidly. That's what we're finding is that we may plan, 2 years out. We go in and okay, the first 3 months we're going to deliver this. We revisit that roadmap at the end of before they go live. And say, okay, this phase 2, does this still really look like this? Are these still your priorities? Is this still how you want to measure the business? And 9 times out of 10, you're adjusting that roadmap every 3 or 4 months. So the way it used to be done is you have this giant data warehouse project for the last 2 years, and it's not valuable to anybody when you're done.
I think you talked about a story too, Tejas, about an organization that was looking at kind of some of the revenue analytics and data and deferred revenue analytics, and that simple little project that spawned into a tax question and a tax data analysis, because when you start looking at it by state, there was possibilities for refunds, obligations, things of that nature.
Yeah, it was an interesting piece of work. So this company called us in and said, that we think that we have a problem. I said, okay, what's that problem? We think that we have entire subledger being managed in Excel. Yeah, that's a problem. We got now lots of lines and a lot of manual intervention. So they said, can you help us make it more robust, put some controls, and then build some analytics so we can kind of start seeing what's going on in there. So we did a little work for them, consolidated a lot of data, and did some data analytics. As we were doing that, because we are tax guys, we also start thinking from a tax perspective. So we started looking at the U.S. data, and then we started looking at the relationships with the U.S. data, selling goods to New Hampshire, and then selling it back to Chicago. So there were like trades happening, domestic trades happening. And then we got sort of all the data matched up and started showing it to the tax guys and said, yeah, there's an opportunity there where the tax was completely missing out and maybe extinguishing their NOL liabilities or the NOL positions that they were taking in some of the states because of the sales being rerouted to different states. So suddenly that opened up a lot of state tax opportunities. So they could either get a refund or there could be a liability depending on how the data went. So we're still now helping them from the tax side, assessing what is the potential refund, and it unlocked probably a lot of millions for them just by looking at the data. And that was a great example of how finance and tax, we were able to help them coordinate and work together.
Todd, I think that's the important thing is, you mentioned earlier, this is not just a technology consideration. It's because we all know technology moves quickly and changes quickly. You're still going to have the people and processes and functions that have to work together to execute a good DNA strategy, right?
We always start with what's the business decision? What are you trying to solve with this particular implementation? And then we'll figure out what technology is best fit. Because it depends on what you have in-house, what your vendors are, so on and so forth. But a lot of technology at work, it's really about the analysts and the technologists that are involved. And it does take both. But the key is what business value are you trying to drive out of this?
Well, you mentioned something about the cloud too. A lot of that technology is on the cloud. So what's that?
We're seeing a big boost to the cloud over the last couple of years, especially this year. With the other type of projects we often do is we'll be a component. It's not necessarily just an analytics project, but it's a component of an overall transformation project, whether it's finance transformation, HR transformation. But data and analytics, both reporting and analysis, play such a key role in all these projects now. To me, that's where the real, it's kind of self-serving because I'm in the analytics group, but the real value that I like to say is in the reporting and the information you get out of it.
Are there any specific skill sets you see organizations really need to have to make successful DNA strategy work? Or,
Yeah, I mean, any project we do has three core skill sets or three core roles that might be filled with multiple people. There's an overall architect, so someone has a vision for what it is you're trying to do and kind of manages the project. Then you have an analyst role, it's a BA, and someone who understands the business decisions, understands the type of reporting you should do today, and can help translate that to an analytic environment. And then there's a core tech role. So you have to be able to build the data models, you have to be able to work with unstructured data, and potentially some ETL, extra transfer and load type work as well.
I think within the tax, we have a slight difference where we need a techno-functional person who can talk both IT and business language. Because often tax goes to IT and says, we need this data, and IT would say, no, we don't have that data, just work with whatever you've got. But if you have a techno-functional person in that tax organization who can speak both IT and tax, I think they have a better chance to extract the right amount of information in the right way.
what if that doesn't exist?
They have started, as I said, that tech company has got data scientists just for that very reason, so they can extract the data directly themselves.
Where have you seen organizations, maybe Roger or Todd or Taylor's, where they, I'll say, need to supplement that expertise with that external help?
So I'll give you an example maybe of I think, how an analytics story can unfold for a company, and then maybe some pitfalls around it. So we had a large client department store that said they wanted to improve some of their predictive capabilities, looking at how they could measure correlation to various data sources and what would be the best and most effective models to examine that. And various analysis was done, great analysis was done, and the development of algorithms and a model that was very sophisticated, very precise in terms of prediction of revenues was really spot on. It required them to bring in some people that could look at the mathematics, look at the formulas that needed to be created to identify that, and it required them to have some critical thinking around what's the data sources and what's the information that they needed to look at. But there was one flaw in the formulas, and that is this was a US-based business. And when you looked at the correlation of the data points that they were pulling in, again, I think it was 98, 99% accuracy in terms of prediction model over an extended period of time. But one of the data sources were fertility rates in Norway. There has been no way fertility rates in Norway affected the US revenues of this company, but yet that was in the analysis that somebody put together. So it illustrates in my mind someone being able to look at what's relevant in terms of data, what's relevant in terms of the information that you want to analyze. You can't just go on a fishing expedition and hope that you get some relevant insights and relevant information that solves an issue or solves a problem. It's got to be very targeted, it's got to be very specific. So you need to have people that understand the business combined with some of those other skills that can develop those sophisticated algorithms and models, being able to extract the data and the information out of systems and finding relevancy to it.
And when you get to predict it, and depending on what you're trying to predict or what question you're trying to answer, the one thing that surprised me when I first started doing this type of work is you often have to get legal involved, because there are certain attributes you're just not allowed to use, whether they're predictive or not, here in the US.
And then I would add one more thing from a visualization perspective. Right? It's very easy to people just take data and start visualizing things, but there's a lot of art behind those visualizations. For example, why would you use a pie chart for a 15-point data distribution? That's not the right type of a chart to use. So all of that, we put a lot of thinking and thought process. The team puts a lot of thinking and thought process behind that. So what story you want to tell, what are the right metrics to measure, what are the right charts to build, and that's the level of expertise that you want. And it's not just pretty chart, but it's
Right.
the deep meaning behind those charts.
I think we all get overwhelmed with data and how to sift through it all. And to your point, you got to be able to present it in a way that you capture the data and the relevant questions that are being answered, or at least being portrayed in what you're seeing. So, I guess just in closing, now that everyone's excited about DNA after this roundtable, they're going to go back to their organizations and say, we need to do this. You know, what's the value proposition? Obviously, there's a value proposition that's different for every organization. I understand that. So, but, in terms of just engaging in initial dialogue, getting that started.
So, I keep saying so, sorry. Maybe one other illustration of it to maybe help people become even more crystallized in their thinking. So we have a retail client that uses satellite imagery of their parking lots to determine what's the flow of traffic that comes in and out of their strip mall lots, so that they can examine what that looks like when they have marketing events going on, when they don't, when competitors might, and what's that traffic and volume that comes through in those individual lots, how's weather influence it, and how do they use that information then to determine what's been their revenue flow through. And then can they turn that information and use it as a predictive model so that they can start to analyze what's happening on a daily basis. That's the power of data and analytics. But it requires you to think differently about what's the data that you want to look at. It's no longer sufficient just to look at transactional information. You've got to figure out what are the other data sources that are